Welcome back. Now we're going to take the cost function we just found and apply it to a profit model. I'm going to make my new blank Excel spreadsheet a little bit bigger, but notice that I am going to make new tabs for each one of these models that I create so you can see how the progression works. I'll also make my zoom a little bit bigger and maybe make my column widths a little bit bigger as well. So first piece of information is my selling price. We hadn't talked about this yet, but let's use $24.95, a classic not quite $25. Our next key component is variable cost. Remember from our previous video that we established that to be $13.75. And our fixed costs are going to be $400. So now in column A, we're going to establish a quantity sold column. And we'll start with 0 and increment by 5 units. There's no exact science here. I'm just going to extend that. And notice that if I highlight the first two and I drag copy, highlight the first two, drag copy, it recognizes my sequence. See the little value in the lower right corner? I'm going to stop that sequence at 100 if I can. Again, it doesn't really matter because these values could extend on even beyond 100. My next column is going to be revenue. And revenue is equal to price times quantity. So if I think about it this way, it's equal to price, my selling price. But if I copy that down to B9, I want B1 to continue to be referenced. But in this case, the B8. So let me complete this. Multiply it by A8, and that will give me my obvious revenue for 0 sold. But if I copy that down, which I'll do just for an example, it says B2 times A9. Well, I want the A9 to be right, but I should have revenue because I want it to reference B1 again, but it referenced B2. Don't know if you can see that up here. So I'm going to go back up here and add. I'm going to do it manually, and then maybe in another example, I'll show you the shortcut. Dollar signs in front of the B and the 1. By doing that, when I copy that formula down from B8 to B9, it's going to replace that formula with B1 times A9, and now we have it referenced properly. If you use your function 2 button, F2 usually at the top of the keyboard, it's a good way to kind of go back and say, oh yeah, B1 times A9, that's what I want. And I'll copy it down one more time here. Hey, that looks pretty good too now. And once that's working, I can drag copy it the rest of the way down. And it looks good. 100 times 24.95 is 2,495. Now we're getting somewhere. Next column is my total cost. Here I'm just going to apply the formula that we created in the previous video, where my total cost is going to be made up my variable cost per unit, which I'm going to put dollar signs in front by editing the cell of the B and the 3, times A8 quantity, and we're going to do that again. That's going to be equal to our variable cost per unit. Let's put the dollar signs in later. This is always, I'm kind of going to leave this in because this is a good example of what might go wrong. And then I'm going to add into that B5. And so sometimes it's easier to make the formula first and then go back in and edit it and put those dollar signs in where you want. That looks better. I'm just going to copy that down one cell, and that looks like it makes sense. Maybe I'll just copy it down to 25 for now. Of course, my final column, assuming I've got my cost function correct, and by the way, never hurts to have a handy calculator about to manually double check your numbers to make sure your formulas are correct. My final column is profit, and I should put loss in parentheses. I'm also going to right click or right justify these. And now profit should be easy. It's simply revenue minus cost. And notice in that particular case, it formatted in red with parentheses to indicate that if our revenue is 0 and our cost is 400, we're at a loss. Just to show you if it's not formatting properly on your screen, right click on Format Cells, Currency, and then choose the fourth option if it's available. Now I can copy that down for 5 cells. And notice we're getting closer and closer to break even. And if I've got that all working properly, I can highlight that, drag copy it down, and notice somewhere between 35 and 40 units that we go from making a small loss to making a profit. Of course, I should save this, and perhaps I will freeze panes in B8. And actually, I'm not going to freeze the panes quite yet. What I am going to do, though, is at almost the last step here, highlight the range of values that I just created, insert a scatter plot, but this time I'm going to choose nice, smooth, straight lines. Scatter with straight lines, because that's what I want to display. I can also change this to solar charger profit. I've got all of my lines nicely identified in the legend here. I can see the break-even point just below 40. And if I'm not satisfied with that, maybe I want to try and change the price. Maybe I'll make it $29.95. Now, once I've got my display set up with my visual graphic, when I change the selling price, notice all of the numbers and the graph change automatically. And I can visually see that my break-even point is now much closer to about 25. And we'll work that out later. So there you have it. A nice, quick revenue, cost, profit model, which has a couple of interesting concepts in terms of how to use those dollar signs to anchor in cell references. And you might be able to use this same type of methodology with other spreadsheet models that you're working on. Thank you.